Coming up on New Day at Arirang, North Korea has confirmed Thursday that it fired a hypersonic missile the previous day. Its state media said the missile precisely hit a set target some 700 kilometers away. In response, world powers condemned the latest move. South Korea is set to report around 4,000 new COVID-19 cases on Thursday. Meanwhile, European nations are again recording new highs in their daily infection cases. And the 2022 Consumer Electronics Show officially kicked off on Wednesday in Las Vegas. Despite the pandemic, the show has finally returned as an in-person event after being held completely virtual last year. This year, more than 2,100 tech businesses from various industries are showcasing the latest technologies.
Hello and welcome to this Thursday edition of New Day at Arirang. I'm Mark Broom.
And I'm Kim Mo-Gyan. Over the next hour, we'll take a look at the big news stories of the day and get expert insights on the issues facing Korea and the world.
We begin with the big news out of North Korea today. The North claims the rocket it fired on Wednesday was a hypersonic missile. The
regime's state-run Korean Central News Agency has just reported it's precisely hit a target 700 kilometers away after laterally moving 120 kilometers to the target azimuth, which is an angle formed between reference points. It added Pyongyang was able to verify the reliability of the missile fuel systems under winter conditions. South Korea's military said Wednesday that the North fired what appeared to be a ballistic missile toward the East Sea from its northern province of Jagangdo. Kim Jong-un was not present for the launch, and the regime conducted the first tests of its hypersonic missile, the Hwasong-8, in September. But South Korea believes it's still in the early stages of development. The missile launched Wednesday, however, appeared to have a different warhead. Regarding the latest missile launch, the U.S. has condemned the move, calling it a violation of UNSC resolutions, and urged the regime to return to dialogue. China called for diplomacy, while Japan slammed the North, saying it posed a grave threat to the country. Kim Hyo-sun with more.
The United States has condemned Pyongyang's latest missile launch, calling it a violation of multiple UN Security Council resolutions, as well as a threat to the international community. These remarks coming shortly after North Korea on Wednesday fired a missile into the East Sea, according to South Korea's Ministry of Defense and the Pentagon. A spokesperson at the U.S. State Department said Washington is consulting closely with its allies and partners in the region. Stressing the U.S. remains committed to a diplomatic approach to the North, the spokesperson called on the regime to engage in dialogue. Responding to the launch, China also pressed for the resumption of talks.
Under the current situation, all parties concerned should keep in mind the big picture, be cautious with their words and actions, adhere to the right direction of dialogue and consultation, and work together to advance the political settlement on the peninsula issue.
Beijing emphasized that exchanges and cooperation between countries would promote mutual understanding and trust rather than targeting or undermining the interests of third parties. Japan condemned the North, saying the regime's missile tests pose a grave threat.
We find it truly regrettable that North Korea has continued to fire missiles from last year. The government wants to strengthen its vigilance and surveillance more than ever. We are now conducting a detailed and urgent analysis.
Citing experts, the AP said the North's launch, the first of its kind since October, signals it's not interested in rejoining denuclearization talks anytime soon. Rather, they say it shows the regime is focused on pushing ahead with its military buildup. Kim Hyo-sun, Arirang News.
South Korean President Moon Jae-in was also quick to respond to the missile launch as well and called for sincere efforts for dialogue. He noted there could be a rise in tensions and the current stalemate could deepen. Our senior Blue House correspondent Kim Min-ji reports.
President Moon Jae-in expressed concerns over North Korea's latest test firing of a suspected ballistic missile, calling for earnest efforts from Pyongyang for dialogue. He was speaking Wednesday as he attended a groundbreaking ceremony for the construction of a railway connecting the country's east coast to a town near the border with the north.
오늘 아침 북한은 미상의 단거리 발사체를 시험 발사했습니다. 이로 인해 긴장이 조성되고 남북 관계의 정체가 더 깊어질 수 있다는 우려가 있습니다. 그러나 우리는 이러한 상황을 근원적으로 극복하기 위해 대화의 끈을 놓아서는 안 됩니다. 북한도 대화를 위해 더욱 진지하게 노력해야 합니다.
Seoul's National Security Council also expressed concern over the North's launch, saying it comes at a time when stability is important both at home and abroad. During an emergency meeting Wednesday, the UNSC vowed to closely work with intelligence and defense authorities of South Korea and the U.S. to analyze the details. The members also reaffirmed the need for a swift resumption of talks to ease tensions. Progress on that front has been at a standstill since the no-deal North Korea-U.S. summit in 2019, with Pyongyang remaining unresponsive to overtures from Seoul and Washington. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
France's Senate has unanimously passed a resolution calling for France to support the adoption of the end-of-war declaration on the Korean Peninsula. The resolution was proposed a couple of months ago by the chairman of the French Senate Committees on Foreign Affairs, Defence and the Armed Forces. France's foreign minister described it as a great initiative. The resolution calls for Paris to endorse countries' efforts to establish lasting peace and the complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. We now turn to the COVID-19 situation in South Korea. The country's daily tally is forecast to hover around the 4,000 mark once again today, as there has been a steady decline in the number of cases.
This comes as the country continues to ramp up efforts to curb the spread through adjusting measures and securing more treatments. For more on this and other updates, we have our Choi Min-jung here in the studio with us. Good morning, Min-jung.
Good morning.
Morning.
Let's start with a local situation. How many cases are we expecting today?
Again, we're expecting the daily tally to surpass the 4,000 mark once again. From midnight to 9 p.m. on Wednesday, South Korea reported around 3,400 cases. This is down by around 200 cases from the day before and around 1,000 cases less than a week ago. We are continuing to see an overall decline in the number of infections amid the country's strengthened social distancing measures and booster shot drive. However, health authorities remain on high alert as the number of imported cases have increased in recent days. On Wednesday, the country saw 211 imported cases, and this is the second highest figure the country ever witnessed, and it's more concerning given the Omicron situation in the global front.
Now, Min-jung, earlier this week, a South Korean court, as we reported on, suspended the use of these so-called vaccine passes at private educational facilities. How is the government responding to that?
Well, the government immediately appealed the court's decision to suspend vaccine pass mandates at study facilities. The government reiterated that the expansion of vaccine passes are mandatory to keep the virus situation under control and to recover our daily lives. Authorities also clarified that it's essential to protect the unvaccinated who are more likely to become severely ill with COVID-19 and to secure the country's medical system. The government also explained that it is more reasonable to overcome the crisis by implementing passes rather than strengthening social distancing, which impacts the whole of society, including the country's economy. Meanwhile, there were some who were happy with the suspension of vaccine passes in study venues. Let's take a listen.
Students were very anxious when the vaccine pass mandate was suddenly announced. With the mandate, students may not be able to take exams when they have vaccine side effects.
If my friends are not vaccinated, there is no place for us to prepare for job interviews. If the vaccine pass mandate is suspended, anyone will be able to use study cafes, but I am worried about the risk of infection.
So students and those in the academic arena are welcoming the court's decision, and there are already voices that the suspension should be broadened to restaurants as well.
So, Min-jung, we're hearing that the government is moving to, further improve the current vaccine pass system in response to the current backlash. Tell us more on that.
Right. The government is reviewing plans to expand the list of people eligible for vaccine pass exemptions. This comes as officials have been criticized for measures that require passes at essential venues like restaurants and supermarkets from those who might be unable or unwilling to get vaccinated due to pregnancy or underlying health conditions. Authorities added that they will consider making improvements to the current vaccine pass system together with experts in order to sort out any confusion that exists surrounding exceptions for vaccinations. However, officials did stress once again that the primary measure the government must take during a resurgence would be to expand vaccine passes.
Well, you would have hoped that the government would have figured this out before they launched the vaccine pass system, but I guess that wasn't to be. But South Korea is ramping up efforts to try and treat people who already have COVID-19. And we hear that more oral treatments are about to come into the country.
Right. South Korea has signed a deal with Pfizer to secure additional coronavirus pills for 400,000 people. Last month, the country signed a pre-purchase contract with Pfizer and MSD to buy enough doses for around 600,000 patients. And given the latest contract with Pfizer, the country has now secured enough to cover over 1 million people. South Korea's Ministry of Food and Drug Safety authorized emergency use of Pfizer's oral treatment last month for use starting mid-January for those being treated at home.
All right, we'll look forward to that. Thank you for your report, Min Jung, as always.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, Europe is again seeing a surge in COVID-19 cases, with several countries reporting record daily cases due to an explosion of Omicron infections.
Among the countries seeing new records on Tuesday was Sweden with 17,320, the Netherlands with 24,500, and Croatia at over 8,500. However, watchers say that despite the record figures, there's a decline in the number of severely ill, backing many experts' analysis that Omicron is less severe.
Now it's time for On Point, where we speak to experts to delve deeper into the biggest news stories in the spotlight right now. Cases of COVID-19 are on the rise again, especially globally, of course, with the Omicron variant steadily finding its way into pretty much every country in the world right now. It's already by far and away the dominant variant in the United States and parts of Europe, with both regions seeing this recent explosion in new Omicron infections.
And despite being into year 3 of this pandemic, the ramifications of it remain real, and what happens in the years to come is anyone's guess, but even the most optimistic would say it's unlikely to be good, socially, economically, or politically. For more on where we stand in relation to the pandemic, we're joined by Ben Cowling, Chair Professor of Epidemiology at the University of Hong Kong. Good morning, Professor.
Good morning.
So, Professor, despite all the resources and money the pandemic caught the world off guard, have international health institutions dropped the ball, or are they doing the best they can in this current bad situation?
I think the next few months are going to be tough, with Omicron challenging many different parts of the world, as you mentioned. Hopefully, after we see the end of Omicron, after we see the numbers coming down again, I think a lot of countries are going to begin to see the light at the end of the tunnel, maybe the end of the pandemic getting closer and closer. I know we said this 6 months ago when it looked like Delta was potentially coming to an end, but I think with Omicron having posed an even bigger threat than Delta, hopefully when Omicron's done, we'll be able to say it's the end of the pandemic and be able to move into a more epidemic phase. And that means an end to much of the government measures. And also it means time for a review of what worked, what didn't work, which countries did better jobs, which countries didn't do so well, and how did the WHO do? And I think that would be fascinating to really compare and contrast what's worked and what hasn't worked.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to look back at this pandemic in a number of years' time, whenever it's finished. But as we all know, in many developed countries, including South Korea, the UK, where you are now, people are on their third, even fourth COVID-19 shot in certain circumstances, while poorer nations either have none or have received very few. This is now year 3 of this pandemic. So who do you think bears the most responsibility for this inequity? And if anything, is there something that can be done to rectify it?
I think it's very clear that the majority of vaccine doses have been administered in the more resourced countries, the more developed countries, and there hasn't been so much vaccine available in less developed countries. And that's really a big issue, I think. I know the World Health Organization had a COVAX program where they wanted to get donations of vaccines and give a lot of vaccines to developing countries. But that hasn't worked as well as I think it was hoped. And the numbers of vaccines donated weren't as high as thought. And there were also quite a number of issues with delivery of vaccines of certain types and then getting it into people's arms. And now it's 2 years into the pandemic. Much of the developing world has had COVID epidemics, sometimes multiple epidemics, and maybe vaccines won't do as much good now as they would have done 6 months ago, but they can still do some good. And I think it's still important to proceed with this global distribution of vaccines and make sure that everybody in the world has a chance to get vaccinated if they want to.
And Professor, we're seeing Omicron spreading like wildfire since the beginning of this year. It's already the 4th or 5th variant to emerge. Do you see even more strains popping up in 2022? And if so, what's the best scenario we can hope for?
I think it's likely that we will have more variants in the future. I know that Omicron came as a bit of a shock. It came out of the blue. I hope that in the future, the variants won't be as different as Omicron is with so many mutations. But it's very difficult to predict what's going to happen in the future. As we've seen, I think Omicron came out of the blue. Maybe there'll be another one as well in the coming year. So I'm reluctant to say, what might or may not happen. But regardless of what variants come in the future, I think we'll see less and less public health impact of COVID as time goes on because of the immunity that's now been built up, mainly through vaccines, but also in some places through natural infections. And I think that means in the future, COVID won't pose as much of a threat, even when these new variants emerge.
Okay, well, that's good news. Finally, away from vaccines, how do you see the rate of speed at which anti-COVID treatments have been developed and distributed? And is what we have right now, do you think, sufficient enough to treat the sick, or does more research need to be done?
Oh, I think it's fantastic news. I just saw your report that you're going to get a whole load of the Pfizer antiviral drugs being available from mid-January onwards. That's really great. And I think 2 years into the pandemic, having an effective antiviral like that is wonderful news. But that drug is mainly for mild cases, maybe mild cases in people who could have a higher risk to progress to severe disease. What we don't have still are treatments for people who end up in hospital with severe COVID, and that's the first time they're seen by the healthcare system. What's the best treatment for people who present at hospital with severe disease? And that would be still a gap for future development of effective drugs, whether it's antivirals or other kind of medicines. But I think we're in a good place now compared to where we were a year ago.
All right. Professor Cowling, we appreciate you joining us. Thank you always, as always, for your insights.
Thank you.
The 2022 Consumer Electronics Show officially kicked off in Las Vegas today in light of fears over the highly transmissible Omicron variant. Major tech companies, including Amazon and Google, have cancelled their in-person appearances this year.
But the organizers are pushing ahead with what they call a hybrid format. Our Ji-young is in Las Vegas for us to give us the first peek of the new gadgets on the show. Ji-young.
Morgan and Mark, I'm at Las Vegas Convention Center where CES 2022 kicked off today. The event will run until Saturday, and even spiking COVID-19 cases can't stop tech fans from attending one of the world's hottest and most influential annual tech events, the CES. The Consumer Electronics Show, which turned completely virtual last year due to COVID-19 restrictions, is back here in the Sin City, and accepting visitors in person. Albeit smaller than in previous years, as COVID is keeping some people home, more than 2,100 businesses from various industries are showcasing their latest technologies. For safety, several precautionary measures are being implemented. All attendees are required to provide proof of COVID-19 vaccination, and they're required to wear masks at all times. Visitors can take a free COVID-19 test using a self-test kit provided by the organizers before getting a green light to enter the venues. The organizers also said they have reduced the capacity with more space between exhibitors and are keeping social distancing measures in place following health protocols from the CDC and the WHO.
The CES is seen as the test bed for the most important tech trends in the coming years as well.
It sure is, Mark, and global firms are showcasing their latest technologies, and some of the hot trends include AI mobility, digital health, and robotics. And with Omicron exacerbating the surge in COVID-19 infections, digital health is one of the major topics at this year's event. More than 100 health companies are taking center stage, showing off their latest solutions to fight the pandemic and boosting public health. Abbott is a medical device maker which distributed free self-test kits to attendees at CES 2022 with the event organizer. Their COVID-19 antigen self-test kit is easy to use and provides the result in just 15 minutes. ViraWarn, the first ever portable device that can detect the COVID-19 virus in the air real time, has been deployed by Optiv. It detects and lets the users know whether the COVID-19 virus is in the room where they're in within 5 seconds. Also, they have a portable COVID breath analyzer device where a user can just blow into a device to detect the virus. South Korean firm BodyFriend, which won an innovation award at CES 2022, also introduced technology that'll enhance public health. Their massage chair records the user's cardiogram, and by using AI technology, they let the users know whether the users have cardiovascular diseases. Another huge area to look for at CES this year is mobility, where an intriguing category in space technology has been newly added. Sierra Space stands out with its Dream Chaser, a space utility vehicle designed to serve various missions in space, including transporting crew and cargo to low Earth orbit like the International Space Station.
Well, it seems like there's a lot of things to look out for at this year's event. So, Ji-young, AI and robotics was also one of the significant tech topics at this year's CES. And I heard South Korean firms were at the center.
Yes, you're absolutely right, Mogan. South Korean tech giant Samsung has unveiled a housekeeper and a personal assistant AI avatar, which only exists in the digital world. It locates and connects the user to the nearest smart device and does house chores that the user wants it to do by controlling home appliances. South Korean automaker Hyundai also showcased innovative robots, and they say robotics is an essential part of Hyundai Motor's transformation into a smart mobility solution provider. Also, South Korean firm Hancom Office also presented their latest technology and won a Smart City Innovation Award at CES 2022 for HiCheck, a remote water reading service. It utilizes AIoT and AI deep learning technology, where the system monitors water meter gauges in a more energy efficient and convenient way. This is all I have for now, but I'll bring more updates on innovations at CES 2022 in our later newscast. Back to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ji-young. Maybe she had some mind-reading technology put into her at CES. But thank you, Ji-young, for that report.
And moving on, global consumer demand has been recovering, and South Korea's exports rose to a record last year. But one challenge is a skyrocketing cost of shipping because of supply chain disruptions. And as a result, this year, the South Korean government says it will step up support for exporters. Kim Sang-min reports.
With the ongoing Omicron variant slowing down major ports and disrupting global supply chains, shipping and air freight rates are skyrocketing. Just last Friday, the Shanghai Containerized Freight Index, which reflects ocean freight rates, hit a record high, breaking the 5,000 mark for the first time in its history. Exporters are taking a hit from the higher freight rates. To ease such concerns, the government has decided to expand its logistics support for the country's exporters. According to the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy on Wednesday, at least 4 ships will be provided every month throughout 2022 for the busiest ocean shipping routes, including routes to the U.S. The government also plans to expand its financial support for logistics costs to $26.7 million. That's an increase of 20% from a year earlier. Also, during the first half of this year, loans of up to $125 million will be provided to firms hit by the logistics disruptions. In the long term, new distribution centers will open at ports in the Netherlands, Indonesia, and Spain. Praising last year's record-high export figures, the government pledged its full support to extend such growth momentum. Kim Sung-min, Arirang News.
Now we cross over to our Arirang for Global Insight and an in-depth look at important developments in world affairs.
Thanks very much, Mark. It's time for Global Insights, where we speak to experts from around the world to hear their views on issues making headlines. The world's largest consumer tech exhibition opens in Las Vegas local time on Wednesday, and the Consumer Electronics Show is the place where all exciting gadgets and innovations are showcased by the biggest names in the industry, setting the tone for major tech trends of the year. But the mega event was forced to launch online only last year. However, this year CES is back offline, buzzing with activity, new keywords and gimmickry, as our reporter just showed us. But the scale of the event has been downsized significantly this year, from just 4 days to just 3, due to the rise of the Omicron variant, of course, and a whole list of major tech companies have decided to drop out. So will CES deliver this year, or is it losing its luster as the mecca of consumer tech? For this, we invite Professor Tuminast Erdenbold, Assistant Professor of AI and Big Data at Usong University of Korea, to discuss what to expect at this year's CES and the tech trends that are going to define the year of 2022. Very warm welcome to you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Good morning. Thank you.
Good morning. And well, Professor, the show in Las Vegas, of course, it opened on Wednesday, but it was preceded by weeks and weeks of anticipation and a lot of speculation about what these big companies are going to unveil to the public. And, well, what are the biggest buzzwords surrounding CES this year?
Okay, so the CES 2022, this year event is held a hybrid mode, online and offline both mode. And the definitely tech giant companies introducing their new technology prototype concepts and the vision in the technology area. And one of the technology biggest buzzword is it's under the metaverse. It's highly emphasizing, along with the electronic vehicles, AI and robotics, autonomous vehicle, and digital healthcare technologies.
Yes, metaverse
and I would say,
yes, it definitely has been one of the big buzzwords, and we've heard quite a lot about it. In fact, some reporters have been complaining about the overuse of metaverse and NFTs. But first of all, I want to ask you about the more traditional aspects of CES. Of course, TV panels, they're the standout feature of CES every year, with dazzling displays from the likes of Samsung and LG Electronics, Sony. Well, we thought that we'd actually seen it all with these bendable, rollable and even vertical TVs, but now it seems to be all about the quantum dot. What kinds of innovations are you expecting to see this year in display technology?
So the display technology, what I see is LG company from the Korea is leading in this industry. And then the most biggest inch of this OLED screen with the 97-inch introduced, both the smallest one with the 42 inches of the TV OLED is introduced, and behind the this OLED TV also the AI chips are involved in it, which is greatly enhancing the contrast and the details and more brightness of the OLED TVs. One of the interesting demonstrations into this CES 2022.
Right, so a lot of excitement surrounding Samsung's new OLED TV, the QD OLED TV, and apparently Sony's expected to release one as well. So a lot of anticipation there. And well, also, while CES was traditionally about the big, huge display panels, it's now starting to turn into something of a mobility show with cars from Hyundai, Mercedes-Benz, BMW. But big names like BMW and Mercedes-Benz, they've dropped out of the show. But there has still been there's been a great amount of attention over Mercedes-Benz's Vision EQXX concept car, which was actually unveiled separately this week. And well, apparently it's not really the speediest EV around, but then what would you say is the wow factor about this car?
The EV, under the EV concept, the Mercedes is highly trying to drive out the perfect car. Not only the electronics and the chip and the batteries enhanced advanced technologies, but also in order to increase the greater efficiency, used also the mechanical parts, including the aerodynamics and the materials used in the mechanical parts. So designing all these parts, they try to be more greater efficient, fastest and lightest electronic vehicle under this concept.
Right, they're really trying to knock Tesla off its game, a lot of these new EV cars. And well, during the height of the pandemic, we've seen huge IT firms and mobility firms like Mercedes-Benz finding other ways to unveil their latest products and engage with customers through very unique experiences. And that really leads to the question, though, whether CES is going to be what it was in the past. I mean, the biggest names in tech, including Microsoft, Google, Amazon, they've all cancelled their exhibitions last minute in Las Vegas. Do you think CES is losing significance?
In my opinion, the CES is one of the global giant events since 1967, more than 50 years. It's a big brand name, and technology developer, manufacturing companies, they are expecting to see the new developments in the beginning of every year. So in my opinion, it will not be lose the significance. However, this time it's because of the pandemic, the new variant of the Omicron is spread out, and the health care, the strict measurements taken on it for it. But I think it will be resolved after the pandemic era into the normal, the norms.
Well, you mentioned the metaverse being one of the buzzwords this year, and well, 2021 was the year that terms like metaverse and NFTs, they became part of our daily language. What developments do you expect to see this year?
So last year, the Facebook changed its name to Meta, and then follow up with this one. Many companies, tech companies, tend to see in the next generation of the web is it's shifting from two-dimensional web to 3 dimensions. So that's the way many companies are integrating with the metaverse into their business strategic integration, and that's the way we can see in this CES many concepts combined with the Meta. And in this year, compared with the last year, I think it will be more concepts and business models will be developed, and business feasibilities will be more inspected along with it. And then initial phase of the metaverse platform environment development will be start. There's a huge works behind on it, including the technology standards and the graphical designing. Huge amounts of the development jobs are expecting behind on it.
Well, a lot of South Korean companies, they've been they're opening offline booths at CES. And how are they joining the whole metaverse bandwagon and incorporating NFTs in CES this year?
Okay, well, in Korean government is highly giving the attention for the new technology developments, including the metaverse. That's the way last year Seoul Metropolitan, the city government office announced to shift, launch the metaverse, the pad for hub for the metropolitan area. So follow up with this, the policy, this year, the Seoul city, together with the 25 local companies, together in the metaverse, under the wagon. It's attending in the CES, and then also in Korea this year it's more than 400 company which is attending in the CES 2022, which is ranked as the second largest participant country in the metaverse area.
And well, among these new technologies and among these new virtual concepts that South Korean companies are bringing to the table, Hyundai's digital twin seems to be one of the hottest talking points at CES. Could you explain what's so special about this whole meta mobility concept?
Okay, the Hyundai is last year integrated with the Boston Robotics, Boston Dynamics, and this robotics or the Hyundai is seen as the future strategic, one of the important tool for especially under the meta mobility. And basically behind it, so in the metaverse environment, we could use the robotics as a physical environment, our avatar. So that was one of the very wonderful thing. And also the mobility together with the virtual, the metaverse environment, we can be using the mobility devices in the healthcare. Also the disabled peoples, they can be used the physical the environment with the robotics, especially the plug and drive robotic the models was one of the interesting the item. And it can be used for the smart logistics and then transportations, container, and then especially also disaster-affected area. It's a portable hospital solutions able to be delivered using the mobility technology. And then addition, it's beyond together the immersive this technology in the future. The robots can be sent to in the space, such as Mars, and in that case, the people from the Earth are able to be connected using the robots as a physical avatar, and then it can be even controlling not only to see it, but also immersively able to be connected with the robots in the physical the environment as well.
Right, so really connecting the physical and virtual spaces together and stimulating things. It's not just going to be cool and fun to apply it in real life, but also very useful, and it could help productivity. And well, digital health, now that's been another buzzword for a couple of years now, but the pandemic's given a further boost to the sector. What kind of health tech are you looking forward to emerging at this year's CES?
Okay, because of the pandemic, now it's a new type of the culture in the society, like work from the home. It's kind of the common norms becoming. Along with this one in the digital healthcare area, devices, including the consultants, especially the telemedicine services, will be one of the practical implementation for upcoming years, because of from the home. It will be able to be consult over the telemedicine technologies remotely with the hospital and the doctors, as well as for the health area, the fitness, the digital fitness tools, which is integrated with the TV and the smart TV technologies, are also upcoming for this year.
And well, amid the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, what do you think will be the biggest tech trends of this year, 2022?
Okay, so generally the CES, it's defining all new trends throughout this year, but also the artificial intelligence will be more taking the places in this year. The AI is integrated with the chip to more energy efficient, and then more the faster the algorithms able to be used in the AI. Also, the AI will be more engaging into the factories, together combined with the digital twin and robotics technology to become the reality.
And this is where we'll have to wrap up the interview today. Of course, CES this year is going to be downsized significantly, but of course, CES is always about just looking at all the new, exciting, innovative technologies and seeing the possibility of where our world is going to go with all this new tech. So I'm sure there's a lot to look forward to. Well, thank you very much for joining us today, Professor Temenast Erdenbold, Assistant Professor of AI and Big Data at Ul-sung University of Korea. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And concerns over the spread of the Omicron variant in the U.S. have prompted the Recording Academy to delay the 64th Grammy Awards until further notice. The ceremony was originally scheduled for January 31st at the Crypto.com Arena in L.A. Last year's ceremony was pushed back 6 weeks to the middle of March, and the delay means K-pop group BTS will have to wait a little longer to see if they take home this year's Grammy for Best Pop Duo or Group Performance.
Koreans living overseas who want to vote in South Korea's presidential election in March have until Saturday to register. There has been a drop in registrations compared to the last election, but there are people who see it as their civic duty to encourage citizens to exercise their democratic right to vote. Kim Do-yeon with more.
There are only 3 days to go until the closure of registration for overseas and absentee voters, those outside the country during the election period in South Korea. As of Wednesday morning, around 175,000 voters across the world had signed up, merely around 7.5% of what the government believes are eligible voters overseas.
The registration is currently ongoing, and many people are putting in efforts to promote more registrations. But the rate is low. There must be many reasons, but voters overseas need to take more interest in the election and sign up.
Mr. Kwak and other South Koreans in New Zealand have started a website to tackle the low sign-up rate. The website includes a competition that local residents can participate in with a prize raffle at the end. Businesses ranging from restaurants to grocery stores have donated vouchers for their stores to attract more participants. Across the globe in Europe, Ms. Jung Sun-kyung, who has been vocal about social issues pertaining to South Korea on the global stage, had an experience that pushed her to promote overseas voting, especially the registration part.
I was walking up slowly to the polling station and someone cut the line to vote. But he ended up not being able to vote because he didn't know he had to sign up to vote before the actual election period.
Despite the efforts, sign-up rates are disappointing, especially compared to 5 years ago for the previous presidential election. But representatives aren't losing hope and are sharing the daily numbers of new registrations with each other. Out in Oman, where South Koreans have to keep their citizenship as local law doesn't give citizenship to immigrants, some even still pay taxes to South Korea. Mr. Kim Jun-bae says it's a right that needs to be maintained.
It's a bit disappointing because we need to keep our right to vote through participation, as the right to vote was earned through hard work and with the help of South Korean lawmakers. But I heard the general consensus at the moment is that it's a waste of money considering only 10% of eligible voters sign up.
Another aspect that doesn't help overseas voters is that many have to travel, sometimes thousands of kilometers, to get to a polling booth. However, representatives all say for more improvements to be made, a high rate of registration and actual participation is required. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. Mayhem in Kazakhstan as President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev accepted the government's resignation on Wednesday after a fuel price increase in the oil-producing Central Asian country triggered massive protests where 8 people were killed and nearly 100 police officers injured. The protests began after the government lifted price controls on liquefied petroleum gas at the start of the year, despite many Kazakhs having converted their cars to run on LPG because of its low cost. Calling it an act by terrorists, President Tokayev said Almaty Airport had been seized by protesters on Wednesday, while 5 airplanes were also hijacked. He warned that if the unrest continues, it would be met with a tough response. Currently, the entire country is under a state of emergency, with protesters reportedly torching a number of public buildings throughout the country. According to local media, the presidential residence in the capital has also been compromised and set on fire. The nation's police chief blames extremists and radicals for the deadly protests, with the National Guard and army units now having joined the police to secure the country. Devastating news out of Philadelphia, where at least 13 people were killed in an early morning fire on Wednesday after smoke detectors failed to go off. According to the city's fire department, among the dead were 7 children. Firefighters fought for about 50 minutes to control the blaze on the second floor of the 3-story row house, which is owned by the city's public house authority. While 8 people managed to escape the building through one of the 2 exits, fire officials say the death toll could rise. None of the 4 smoke detectors went off, as officials are now investigating the malfunctions. While the building was initially converted to house 2 families, 26 people lived in the building at the time of the fire. Spain will consider a pet's welfare when couples divorce or separate, in a legal shift that strengthens the case for couples obtaining shared custody of their animals. But for some, the biggest takeaway is how pets are to be perceived moving forward.
I think the most important thing is the modification of the law so that they are no longer considered things, but beings with feelings, and that their welfare must be considered by judges and magistrates in legal proceedings.
The decision on Wednesday also follows similar moves in France and Portugal, obligating judges to consider pets as sentient beings rather than objects owned by one or the other partner. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Good morning. The cold snap eases today. Morning temperatures are about 3 degrees higher than the same time yesterday, and temperatures will go higher than season norms across much of Korea by the afternoon. But when temperatures ease, we know what could be on its way. Yeah, it's defying dust that will be choking the capital, Chungcheongdo and Jeollabuk-do provinces, where dust levels look to be high for most of the day. So morning temperatures are about 2 to 8 degrees higher in most regions. Daegu kicking off the day at -1 degree Celsius, Daejeon at -5 degrees. Daytime highs will be 1 to 4 degrees higher than yesterday, so Seoul will be going up to 4 degrees, Busan and Jeju at 11 degrees Celsius this afternoon. Sunny skies to dominate with dry alerts in place on the East Coast. There should not be any major cold spell through the weekend, then freezing air makes its return by early next week. And that's all the weather update for now.
Now that's where we're going to end this edition of New Day at Arirang. We appreciate you tuning in. I'm Kim Mo-kyan.
Yes, thank you for joining us. We'll be back again for our Friday edition at 8 a.m. Korea time. It's been a long week this week, Mo-kyan. Until next time, goodbye.